Good? Go ahead, sir.
And for Terence, are you ready to feel the Mexican power, Terence?
Oh, yeah. I'm ready.
So before Canelo Alvarez got completely dominated by Terence Crawford, or maybe I should go even further than that and say before Canelo got dominated by Bivol, you had a lot of Mexican reporters, analysts, and YouTube interviewers in America that was extremely biased in favor of Canelo Alvarez. Always giving him softball questions, completely overrating him, telling Canelo Alvarez everything that he wants to hear in interviews, completely misleading the public, trying to convince fans that not only was he the greatest Mexican fighter of all time, but at the time, he was the best fighter in the world. Matter of fact, to give you guys a perfect example, I just showed you guys a clip a couple days ago. It was a clip of Marco Villegas from Fight Hub. He was interviewing Fernando Vargas. Once again, this is years back. And Marcos, he starts off the interview, he starts off the question, I should say, basically implying that Canelo is possibly the greatest Mexican fighter of all time. So that's how he asked Fernando the question. He said, you know, a lot of people, they believe right now that Canelo is the greatest Mexican fighter of all time. And Fernando, he started basically agreeing with what Marcos was saying. And he said, yeah, I completely agree. And I believe that he is the greatest Mexican fighter of all time. And then you had ESPN's boxing Mexican analyst, Bernardo Usana. He was the worst of the worst. Not only was he one of the biggest instigators of the Canelo propaganda, but he's also anti-black. So is Claudia Trejo. She's actually even worse. But Bernardo, he's high on that list as well. And I've made a couple videos exposing him with nothing but receipts. So while you had these Mexican reporters and analysts once again in America that was completely overrating Canelo Alvarez, there was some Mexican analysts in Mexico that was actually keeping it real, telling it like it is, unfiltered, completely unapologetic, not caring if it hurt Canelo Alvarez's feelings or not. And one of those analysts is David Faitelson. And I don't know if I said his name right, but he's been covering boxing for years. In fact, he covered a lot of fights with Bernardo Usana. In fact, he even shut down Bernardo. And it was so funny how it all went down. I mean, this was just a really bad week for Bernardo because this was the week, I believe, that Terence Crawford knocked out Sean Porter. Now, remember, Terence Crawford has been pound for pound the best fighter in the world over 10 years, right? But the whole time he's been number one, ESPN and every other old media platform, they have always been trying to replace him with someone who wasn't black, right? It was always a new fighter that they were trying to replace him with. From Chocolatito Gonzalez to Lomachenko to Canelo Alvarez to Inoue to Usyk. They have been trying to get rid of Terence Crawford for 10 years to no avail. And all that did, quite frankly, was motivate Crawford to really smoke the competition. And now it's gotten to the point to where it's undeniable that Crawford is not only the best fighter in the world, but the best fighter of this era. And the only fighter that can really compete with Terence Crawford historically is Floyd Mayweather. So before Terence Crawford had knocked out Sean Porter, old media platforms like ESPN, for example, they kept putting Crawford at number one. Then for no reason, they would remove him and replace him. Then when their guy that they try to replace him with loses, they would put Crawford back at number one. And this pattern went on for 10 years. So at this time, ESPN, they had Canelo Alvarez at number one. After Terence Crawford knocked out Shawn Porter, ESPN, they put Crawford back at number 1. And it was interesting because they had a whole panel, right? It was Max Kellerman, Tim Bradley, Mark Kriegel, Joe Tessitore, and Bernardo. And the funniest thing happened. Everyone on the panel, except for the Mexican analyst, Bernardo, they all agreed that Terence Crawford is pound for pound the best fighter in the world. Bernardo was the only one who said, I disagree with all you guys. I still believe it's Canelo Alvarez. And this is what I mean when I say it was a bad week for Bernardo, because he actually covered the Crawford-Porter fight live with his Spanish team, Carlos Nava and David Fadelston. Now, not only does the entire ESPN American panel tell Bernardo the best fighter in the world is Terence Crawford, but then even his own Mexican colleagues, they tell Bernardo the exact same thing. In fact, it was even worse because they told him that number 1 is Terence Crawford and number 2 is Errol Spence. And this completely enraged Bernardo, something awful. I want to play the clip, but I want to surmise what happened. Since David and Carlos, they know that Bernardo, he's going to say without a doubt, Canelo is still the best fighter in the world. They tell him to his face that Terence Crawford is number 1. And then when David is about to say, and number 2, Bernardo, he cuts him off and he says, yeah, number 2 is who? Inoue? Usyk? He just starts naming a whole bunch of fighters, and David says, no, number 2 is Errol Spence. Man, Bernardo, he was done after that. He was livid because now he's looking at his Mexican colleagues as straight traitors. He was for sure they were going to stay on code, but they surprised him. So Bernardo got so mad that they said that Errol Spence and Terence Crawford, or I should say Terence Crawford and Errol Spence, was number 1 and 2. Man, he got so upset. He said, well, if Terence Crawford and Errol Spence, they don't fight against each other, then they are cowards. He said everyone is always asking Canelo to fight somebody, so Terence Crawford and Errol Spence, they need to fight against each other because that's the only fight that people want to see. So here's the clip right here. I actually used an app to translate it into English. So the image is going to be a little distorted, but it's still clear enough to see.
Even though Crawford does not provoke what we saw here today, nor does he generate as much money as Canelo does. For me, Crawford is still the best in the world, followed by
Usyk, Spence.
No.
Naoya Inoue.
No, Errol Spence number 2, and Naoya and Nobu I put them as 4. I still leave Canelo as number 3. I still leave him among the top 5. Understanding what you explained, Bernie, that he is not at his weight, the one who took the risk to move up was Canelo, and there are the consequences.
I do believe that Canelo lost today as the number 1 pound for pound on the planet. Otherwise, who knows how it would have ended. That is, the physical disadvantage did not allow him to do more, even though he brought his resources. I also agree with David. Terence Crawford, Errol Spence should be number 1 or 2 today. And on the other hand, Crawford has to accept as a free agent to go up against Errol Spence to truly be the number 1 pound for pound on the planet. And watch out, Bivol might have to be among the top 7 in the world now, because it's one thing to be unknown until last Friday, and from today we saw what he is capable of doing precisely to the one at the top of the ranking.
We ask Canelo to face the best. We also have to demand that Terence Crawford and Errol Spence make the fight the only fight left in that division that the world is interested in. If that fight doesn't happen, both are cowards, period. There's no other way to say it. They have to get in the ring, and if not, don't demand anything at all, because no one is interested in seeing them against any other opponent.
Ain't it kind of funny how all these race fans, they kept demanding the Crawford versus Errol Spence fight? That's the fight that has to happen. Whenever people talked about Canelo versus Benavidez, you would have a reporter or some other race fan say, no, forget that. What about Crawford and Errol Spence? They're the ones that really need to fight. They would use the Spence versus Crawford fight as a deflection to get people to stop talking about Canelo versus David Benavidez. And then when it comes to Bernardo, you see how once again, he said that Spence and Crawford, they are cowards if they don't fight against each other, right? But yet he never said Canelo Alvarez is a coward if he vacates his belt and doesn't fight his number 1 contender, Jamal Charlo, right? He's a coward if he doesn't unify the belts and fight Demetrius Andrade at 160. He's a coward if he doesn't fight David Benavidez. So to this day, Crawford, he held up his part of the bargain. He fought Errol Spence and he fought Canelo Alvarez. And ESPN's Bernardo Usana has never praised Crawford for it. So not only did Carlos Nava and David Faitelson tell Bernardo Usana to his face that Crawford was the best fighter in the world years ago, but he also told Canelo Alvarez years and years ago that Crawford and Lomachenko was better than Canelo Alvarez. And that's why he believed that Canelo was the best fighter in the world. David and Canelo, they had a heated exchange where once again, David wasn't afraid. He was telling Canelo the whole truth to his face. And Canelo, just like Bernardo, he was shocked that he had Mexican analysts speaking off code. This exchange, it took place back in 2019, and a lot of people don't even know about it. You know why? Because America's old media, they wanted to bury it. Once again, you have all of these Mexican analysts and reporters that speak Spanish perfectly, but they didn't want this to be reported. They didn't want this shit to be translated. They didn't want it to come out. But now this heated exchange is resurfacing after Crawford beat Canelo Alvarez. And I'm gonna play the clip for you guys. And the good news is I translated this as well. So it's gonna be in English.
Some media already recognize Canelo, especially in the United States, as the best pound-for-pound fighter in the world. It's difficult for one in self-criticism to understand exactly where one stands. Where do you see Canelo in that regard, David, as the best pound-for-pound?
Well, according to Canelo and according to Edie Reynoso, I don't know anything about boxing, but well, from my most humble point of view, I think Terence Crawford is number one.
Vasyl Lomachenko is number 2, and number 3 would be Saul Canelo Alvarez.
What are you basing it on? What are your arguments?
It's a technical issue. It's a physical issue.
No achievements.
Physics?
No, not achievements. It's not about achievements. David, please.
No, it's not about achievements. It's about the fact that for me, the best pound for pound is the most gifted boxer.
No.
In technical terms? In physical terms?
It has to be in achievements, David.
Or do you only fight against easy opponents?
David.
Well, let's not talk about easy opponents, okay?
No, well, I don't think you're going to compare Kovalev with Amir Khan, nor with Anthony Croya, nor with Kus. I don't know who he's going to fight. Who will be a tough them for up.
Let's see, Saul, do you fight with Canelo about being the best pound for pound?
I'm not interested in being pound for pound or not. I've always said that. I've always felt like the best since I was a kid. That's why I've gotten to where I am, right? I'm not interested. But you're wrong in saying it's about qualities. Why? Because the best pound for pound has to be based on achievements and who you're fighting.
Now, let me go ahead and completely surgically break this shit down. Of course, achievements is part of the criteria. And when David talks about Terence Crawford mainly having the skill, I think they mix up the word achievements with who has the bigger names on their resume. This is what pound for pound is based on. It's based on skill set, dominance, and resume in no particular order. Now, when it comes to resume is not just based on how big the names are. Resume is based on what position the opponent was in when you beat him. For example, did you beat a name that advanced to the playoffs and made it to the Super Bowl or the finals? Or did you beat someone that never even made it to the playoffs or had already got beat by someone else in the playoffs? Because remember, when you're in the playoffs, you play against the other team that advanced. You don't play against the team that lost. You see, it's the person in the Olympics that wins the gold medal that gets all of the credit, not because of the names that he beat, but the best fighters that he beat in that tournament. Because you may have one of the most popular names fighting in your bracket, and he doesn't even advance to the finals or even the semifinals. Now, remember, this conversation between Canelo Alvarez and David, it took place in 2019. So in 2019, Terence Crawford, he had already became the undisputed champion at 140. And he was beating undefeated fighters that were coming off of their biggest wins. Not only was he beating undefeated fighters, he was also beating fighters that old media was accusing him of ducking and avoiding, because I got the comments and I made videos about it. Crawford was accused of ducking Victor Postal. He was accused of ducking Felix Diaz. Victor Postal, he was undefeated and he was coming off of his biggest win. Lucas Matisse at the time, he was considered a monster. He was favored to beat Victor Postal. Victor Postal knocked him out. Terence Crawford, he knocked out Felix Diaz. Knocked out the undefeated Ndongo. Now, style-wise, these are all fighters that would have gave Canelo Alvarez hell. He would have struggled against Ndongo and Victor Postal. When it comes to Ndongo and his height, his reach, when it comes to Victor Postol and his foot movement, as slow as Canelo Alvarez is, Felix Diaz, he was an Olympic gold medalist. With his aggression and his intelligence, remember, Canelo, he struggled with John Ryder in the second half of that fight. And Felix Diaz is way better than John Ryder, so he would have been hell for Canelo. Now, like I told you guys, you also have to go off of the biggest wins that the opponents had. Like I told you guys, Victor Postol, he knocked out Lucas Matisse. Ndongo, he had knocked out the undefeated Russian champion, Eduard Troyansky. Now let's just go ahead and move to welterweight. When it comes to Jeff Horn, he beat Manny Pacquiao. Of course, race fans are going to say that Manny Pacquiao, he got robbed, because the race fans know for Manny Pacquiao to lose to a Jeff Horn is extremely embarrassing, because Jeff Horn was someone that not too many fans had heard of. He was a heavy underdog. And the way race fans look at the whole situation is they know that Manny Pacquiao losing to Jeff Horn, it makes Floyd Mayweather look even greater, despite the fact that Floyd Mayweather already beat Manny Pacquiao himself. And the whole robbery talk, it doesn't even make sense, because first of all, Manny Pacquiao, he turned down a rematch with Jeff Horn. And on top of that, Manny Pacquiao, he struggled the entire fight. What made that such a tough fight for Manny Pacquiao is the fact that Manny Pacquiao, he wasn't used to fighting such big, rough, and aggressive welterweights, because Jeff Horn, he was all over Manny Pacquiao like a cheap suit. So with the type of flaws that Manny Pacquiao has in his game, he would have always struggled against a Jeff Horn. Another question would be, how come Manny Pacquiao could not dominate Jeff Horn? How come he didn't dominate him the way Terence Crawford dominated him? Why did he struggle at all? Because there's levels to this, right? So Jeff Horn, he beat Manny Pacquiao. Now, I want you guys to really pay attention to my next point. Does anyone ever notice that when Canelo Alvarez, when he beats a white fighter, when he beats a white champion, he is instantly praised for it by race fans, right? When Canelo beats a Liam Smith, a Billy Joe Saunders, a Caleb Plant, a Caleb Smith, they're calling Canelo Alvarez pound for pound the best fighter in the world, right? But if you notice, when Crawford beats a white fighter like Jeff Horn, those same race fans that was praising Canelo Alvarez win, now they try to discount Crawford's win, right? Because they know deep down that Black American athletes are so gifted, are so talented, that they're set to a higher standard. You see, the race fans, they look at it like, you're black and you're fighting against a white guy. That's not even an even fight. It's not even a fair fight. The craziest thing is, these race fans, they are basically saying the exact same thing that Devin Haney said. When Devin Haney said, I would never lose to a white boy. Deep down, these race fans, they feel the same way about black fighters that Devin Haney himself feels. Now, does this mean that a black fighter will never lose to a white fighter? Of course not. And first of all, you have different white styles, right? I mean, we know that the Eastern European white fighters are way better than the white Western fighters. And we also know that when you look at the dichotomy, there's no doubt about it. If Terence Crawford would have beat a Billy Joe Saunders, if he would have beat a Caleb Smith, if he would have beat a Caleb Plant, these race fans, they would have said the exact same thing, because they feel that that is not a fair fight. This is the reason why, once again, they will always discount a black fighter beating some white fighter, especially once again if he's from Australia or the UK. And on top of all of that, Jeff Horn, he has a much bigger win on his resume than any of the champions, the white champions that Canelo Alvarez beat at 168. Now, this is the last fighter, the last name that I'm going to bring up when it comes to opponents that Terence Crawford beat. We don't even have to talk about Crawford beating Errol Spence and Sean Porter and Canelo Alvarez. And actually, before I bring up the name I was about to bring up, I forgot to mention Gamboa. Gamboa was also another big win. But the other name I want to mention is Jose Benavidez. See, once again, man, people, they try to use this convenient memory to discredit BAs. But the truth is, when it comes to Jose Benavidez, he was looked at as a blue chip prospect. He was a first-round draft pick when he turned pro, just like Mario Barrios was, by the way. Both of them were extremely successful as an amateur. And to this day, Crawford has said that Jose Benavidez, along with Gamboa and Mean Machine, was his toughest fights of his career. If anybody else that wasn't black would have knocked out an undefeated Jose Benavidez the way Terence Crawford did, Man, old media would have flooded the internet talking about this is the next future pound for pound great, etc., etc. I mean, once again, remember, these are the same fans that was praising Canelo for knocking out James Kirkland, who had already previously been knocked out. He wasn't undefeated like a Jose Benavidez. These are the same fans that was praising Manny Pacquiao for beating Brandon Rios, for beating Chris Algieri. So we know what time it is. So getting back to that pound for pound criteria, another attribute that is required is dominance. How dominant are you when you perform? Terence Crawford has dominated all of his opponents. He's never won a fight by controversy, and he's never looked beatable, which is why no one has ever been in a hurry to fight Terence Crawford. Now let's talk about skill set. Now this is a real important one, and this is how I like to look at it. Let's take everyone on the pound for pound list right now, right? And let's say they were all in the same weight class. If you were to match Crawford up against all 10 of these guys, or all 9 of them, how would Terence Crawford fare against them? I think we could all agree that Bud would be favored to beat the majority of them, and the other ones, he would have at least a 50-50 chance of winning the fight. Now, by way of contrast, I think a lot of us would agree that Canelo Alvarez, he would most likely lose to the majority of other fighters on the pound for pound list, if not all of them. In fact, he already lost to 2 fighters that are on the pound for pound list now. Canelo has never beat a fighter that was on the pound for pound list. Now, guys, I wasn't expecting to talk that long because I wanted to get back into this clip where once again, David Faitelson and Canelo Alvarez, they have this heated exchange. Now, in this next clip, it starts off with David making a really good point to Canelo, because Canelo, he's trying to make the point that he's won a lot of belts. And David was saying to Canelo, well, it's easier to win belts today because you can easily cherry pick the weakest title holder, just like Canelo Alvarez has done his entire career, going all the way back to 154 when he had the champion, Demetrius Andrade, calling him out, right? The champion is calling out the number 1 contender, Canelo. Canelo turns down the fight. He waits until Andrade gets stripped of his title, and then Canelo, he fights for that same belt against Liam Smith. So in this clip, you're going to hear David make a great point where he brings up the fighter Jorge Arce as an example, and they're calling him by his nickname in this clip. So David, he basically says to Canelo, well, you know, Jorge Arce, he won 5 titles. Are you going to tell me because he won 5 titles that he's considered the greatest fighter in the history of the sport?
No, it's not about achievements. It's about the fact that for me, the best pound for pound is the most gifted boxer.
No.
In technical terms? In physical terms?
It has to be in achievements, David.
Or do you only fight against easy opponents?
David.
Well, let's not talk about easy opponents, okay?
No, well, I don't think you're going to compare Kovalev with Amir Khan, nor with Anthony Croya, nor with Kus. I don't know who he's going to fight.
Let's see, Saul, do you fight with Canelo about being the best pound for pound?
I'm not interested in being pound for pound or not. I've always said that. I've always felt like the best since I was a kid. That's why I've gotten to where I am, right? I'm not interested. But you're wrong in saying it's about qualities. Why? Because the best pound for pound has to be based on achievements and who you're fighting. I mean,
The Mischievous A became a 5-time world champion. And you're not going to tell me that the Mischievous A is the best boxer in fighting history, right?
But today, collecting belts.
In achievements.
Belts, no. Winning world titles today seems easier than before.
But what I'm gonna...
You have to be measured by your boxing qualities, and you are not better than Lomachenko, and you are not better than Terence Crawford.
So David, he looking like he knows a whole bunch of boxing now. It's going to be hard for Canelo and his team to say, David, he don't know his boxing after what we just seen last weekend. I mean, it's just so crazy to think that David, he was saying this like 6 years ago when no one was even thinking about a fight between Canelo and Crawford, right? Not only did Crawford prove David right, but he also proved David right fighting Canelo Alvarez at a massive disadvantage, a size disadvantage. With that being said, I'm going to wrap this video up. That's all I got for now, guys. I'm on to the next one.
Let's get into the world of boxing.
I didn't see the fight.
You didn't see the fight?
Nope, but you know what's funny? And again, off of the Vlad TV, when I said the comment I made about black fighters 9 times out of 10 being dominant over Mexican fighters, of course all the Mexicans got offended. And they didn't listen to what I said. And I preface it by saying, look, hats off to the Latino legends. Trinidad, Vargas, Duran, Aguayo, De La Hoya. I could go on and on. Chavez. No doubt. No doubt the Latino community has its place in boxing. But 9 times out of 10, when you put the great Mexican fighter up against the great black fighter, the black fighter usually wins 9 times out of 10.
Look, I was following the odds. So according to betonline.ag, Canelo was minus 170, Terence was plus 140. So Canelo was almost twice as likely to win that fight.
But he didn't.
Crawford, he did not. He definitely did not.
Listen, you gotta understand something. This is the best way I can got that whip whop. You understand what I'm saying? It's almost and one street ball. Black people, we have an extra gear when it comes to anything that we do. Singing, dancing, comedy, certainly athletics. It's like a Allen Iverson crossover. Got that whip whop. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of people don't have that. So when we box, got that extra that we do from a speed standpoint, from a showboat standpoint, and we can back it up.
It was a hell of a fight. It was a hell of a fight. And Crawford just dominated the whole time. The whole
Look
time.
when De La Hoya fought Sugar Shane Mosley. Look when De La Hoya fought Floyd Mayweather. Yeah, Roberto Duran, he won the first fight with Sugar, but then look at the Nomas. Look at Tommy Hearns. He knocked Duran out so cold, rumor has it he's still sleeping. Come on, man. Come on, man. Got that whip whop, baby. That Harlem Shake.
Let me tell you guys about Issa Israel Law Firm. It is a full-service legal practice based in Denver, Colorado, an emerging hub for combat sports and high-altitude training. If you're a fighter inside or outside of the ring and you need a law firm you can trust to fight for you, visit thefighterfirm.com or email help@iilawfirm.com. Legal representation is usually limited to plaintiffs or defendants in Colorado, but iFirm can help anyone in the world with trademarking their business name, logos, and U.S. immigration issues. This brother has been my attorney for a while and helped guide me through all kinds of business and civil issues, so make sure you guys go to thefighterfirm.com. All right, now check this out, guys. If you're looking to repair eczema scars, burns and bruises, dark spots and blemishes, the fever blisters, diabetic ulcers, this right here is the perfect product for you guys. It's called Elo Deki Face and Body Oil. Athletes and top-ranking boxers, they're also using it after training to reduce swelling, inflammation, and to ease the pain. So get yours today. Go to elodeki.com, like them on Facebook, and follow them on Instagram.